Okay, thank you very much. Our next speaker and final speaker is Representative Rafael Anchia. State Representative Anchia represents House District 103, covering northwest Dallas County in the Texas legislature. In November 2009, he was appointed to a 4-year term on the influential Sunset Commission by Speaker of the House Joe Straus. Representative Anchia was recently appointed to the Advisory Committee for Trade Policy and Negotiations by President Barack Obama. Representative Anchia is a partner in the law firm of Hayes and Boone, specializing in corporate finance. Most importantly, he lives in North Oak Cliff, that's in this area, with his wife Marissa and his daughters Sophia and Maya, and worships with the Catholic campus community at SMU. Representative Anchia.
Well, I'm glad Russell talked about that part of my bio. I didn't expect it, but it's nice when he mentions family. And in fact, I was sitting there listening to the other speakers, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, this really feels like church, you know? You got vacant seats in the front, people who come in late go straight to the back, sometimes a cell phone goes off. You know, it's funny, I was in church this last weekend, and I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and my 5-year-old, Maya, we usually sit them in between my wife and me, so it's like my wife, a kid, me, a kid, so they don't get to interact with each other. And I was leaning over and saying something to my wife. My youngest daughter, Maya, said, "Shh, Daddy, don't talk." I said, "Why?" She said, "There are people sleeping in here." Okay, so that's another way that this audience reminds me of church. So let's talk a little bit about solar power in Texas and the Texas legislature. I will say that my predecessor panelists did a really great job of covering the landscape. In fact, I was thinking to myself, please leave some meat on the bone. But so many of the slides that you're going to see here may look familiar or redundant. But I put the poster up of Giant. I figured we'd have an international crowd in here. How many people from other countries? Okay. That includes Oklahoma. So anyway, okay, so we got a couple of people in that, but sort of the concept of Giant and Texas are intertwined, right? How many Texans in here? I heard a couple of Aggies earlier. Okay, so mainly Texas. So you all know that in Texas, we like doing things big. We're a big state, a big population, and we like being #1 in a lot of things. And when we were doing deregulation big in 1999, and some of it has been alluded to by prior speakers, there was a discussion about this concept of an RPS. But I will tell you, it was not a major part of the discussion in Texas. It was kind of a throw-in at the end. You know, we're going to deregulate the market. Businesses are going to do well in this market. Well, what about, what if we throw something to low-income consumers, like the System Benefit Fund? So that got thrown into the 99 bill. Let's do something maybe for energy efficiency. So the first attempt at energy efficiency got thrown into the 99 bill. And then there was this concept of an RPS. Nobody really knew anything about it. At the end of the day, it just got kind of thrown into the bill in 1999, and boy has it been successful, especially for wind. You know, it's interesting that in just a very short period of time, we've broken through the 2025 goal for wind here in Texas, and we do things big, and including renewables. So if you look at this map, and these are the same concepts that you've seen before, but I'd like to highlight the fact, and this data is a little bit old because it only shows 10,085 megawatts here in Texas. We're more along the lines of 11,000, but you can add California, Minnesota, and Iowa together, the 2, 3, and 4 states. You can add them all together, and there's still not as many megawatts as we have here in Texas in terms of renewables. It's really, really exciting to see this market in a very short period of time, just over a decade, explode like it has. Even though we're #1, Giant, we're #1 here in Texas, we haven't realized our full potential. In fact, if you look, I think one of the earlier slides from one of my colleagues here said we were number 11. Let's see if I can go back. But certainly, we have a ton of potential here in Texas for renewables and lag behind states like Washington and California. Why do we want a diverse energy portfolio in this state? Any ideas? Why does it make sense? Now, this is an oil and gas state, right? So we've got 21% of total oil and 27.8% of total gas production in this state. We've got a quarter of all the oil reserves in the United States, 32% of all the gas reserves, 26% of all the refining capacity. Why do we need renewables, right? I mean, it sort of gets in the way of oil and gas. This is an oil and gas state. It's been an oil and gas state for over 100 years now. What are the benefits of a diverse portfolio? When I talk to my colleagues in the legislature, I say, hey, how do you invest in your own portfolio, in your personal portfolio? Are you all in real estate or all in stocks or all in bonds? No, right? You know from your personal experience that you need diversity for a bunch of different reasons, including to hedge. Right? So we saw, if you look at the third bullet point, the improvement of reliability in our system. We saw that very clearly during our recent freezes of, it was February of this year, right? Wasn't it? We had some horrible freezes here in the state of Texas where a ton of natural gas capacity went down and a ton of coal capacity went down. And initially, it was funny. You know, the people said, or there were certain people in the marketplace who were saying, oh, it was wind. You know, the freeze impacted wind and the renewable stuff was not reliable. Well, the story was just the opposite. In fact, it was coal and natural gas that went down and wind that saved the day. In fact, Trip Doggett of ERCOT had to come out and say publicly, no, listen, the real story is without wind, we would have been doomed and we would have had even larger rolling blackouts than we had in the state of Texas. And that was, I think, Exhibit A for the reason to have a diverse energy portfolio in the state. You know, and the final point, I'm sure Colin really likes the fact that I included this bullet. Probably not one that carries the day in the Texas legislature, but one that I think is important, and that's being a better steward of the environment. One other bullet that I didn't include here, and one that I'm starting to work on and include in my messaging, renewables are really good because it allows our natural gas and coal to last longer. Right? I've started to try that messaging on some of my more conservative friends in the legislature. It allows us to make sure that our reserves, which are finite, will last longer and improve our energy independence. What do you think about that, fellas? Does that sound pretty good? I've been testing it recently. I decided not to put it in one of these slides. You know, solar energy, we have huge opportunities. It is frequently said that Texas is the buckle of the Bible Belt. Well, we are also the buckle of the solar belt. If you look at this map and some of the potential, especially in West Texas, it's very exciting in terms of what we can achieve. It also is exciting because look at the population centers in the country. You know, we've got 6 of the nation's 20 most populous cities in Texas. You see where they're located, and then you look at West Texas, where all the red is. I mean, the fundamentals are just could not be more clear, especially in light of the prior presentation that you received about the CREZ build-out. So that space between the red and the blue dots is now full of transmission lines that are available to carry utility-scale solar power into these big cities, by the way, that are growing exponentially, right? It is predicted that urban Texas, with the population of urban Texas will double by the year 2040, 2050, in that range. So here in the Metroplex, we've got about 6.5, Metroplex is Dallas and Fort Worth, we've got about 6.5 million people. We're going to be looking at almost 13 million people by 2040, 2050. So when people, you know, talk about, well, when our friends in the fossil fuel industry and gas and coal say, well, you know, you renewables, you were a cute hobby back in 1999 when you weren't on the map, but now that you're almost 10% of installed capacity, you're messing with my pocketbook, okay? You're digging into my market share. And what I try to point out is that, you know, this is not a static discussion. I mean, this is not a zero-sum game. There is going to be plenty of opportunity for natural gas to play a role, for coal to play a role, and certainly for renewables to grow exponentially, especially in light of their nascent stage here in the state of Texas. So we like to be big in Texas. With respect to solar VP, say it with me, we're number 11. We're number 11. that chat just does not sound good. Just does not sound good for the state of Texas. We like to say we're number one, and we need to put things in place, a regulatory regime. Look, Germany is number one. We don't like, in Texas, we don't like to lose to Europeans in anything, right? We call French fries freedom fries now, for God's sakes. So, let's talk a little bit about the history of solar legislation. Our speakers did a good job earlier. The PUC has been the big holdup, and I have a picture of my friend Barry Smitherman there with his smile that puts me at ease in that picture.